If you guys are going to order takeout food delivered to your home in Hoboken, what's your #1 place to call? We'll go to Mr. Bala first on the takeout food order question.
Is it limited to one option?
Takeout or delivery? I really meant delivery, but delivery or takeout, either one, yeah.
There's so many options.
Yeah, you really have to pick one.
I mean, I'm a big fan of Napoli's pizza. I think it's some of the best pizza in Hoboken.
All right, vote for Napoli's pizza. Ms. Nason on the food delivery.
Oh, that's very funny. I own a pizzeria, guys. I mean, I have a cafe. I eat my own food a lot, and I'm the #1 pizza in town. So if you have to say I'm going to order, I like Thai. I order Thai from Hoboken.
Which place?
Sri Thai, I'll order. I happen to think it's very different from everything I have, which is everything. So, from my illegal place. Yeah.
Okay. Ms. Giattino on food delivery or food takeout.
I'm starting to realize how much my life really revolves around my 3 boys, but being that when I order food, it's not really for me, it's for them. It's Mario's Pizza because it's the closest, and usually at that point we're desperate for food.
Okay, all right. A lot of pizza representation tonight in the, Mr. Romano.
I'd have to say pure pita.
Okay, interesting, pure pita. Mr. DeFusco on food delivery or takeout.
You know, I'm really happy to live around the corner from Antique Bakery and Bar. It's an artisanal, fresh, local, creative business. Listen, when something comes right out of the oven, guys, you go and you pick it up and nothing's tastier. And what we need to do is help small businesses like Antique Bakery open up. Seriously. Okay. I mean, we can't only eat pizza, right? We want to inspire food culture. We want small businesses. We want them to open up in our neighborhoods.
Just give the answer.
Okay, that's cool.
So, yes, Antique Bakery and Bar. It's a great local business.
And Mr. Batista on food delivery or takeout.
First of all, I'm really hungry right now because of these answers. Very good choices, everyone. I usually don't order for them to delivery, to the delivery. I usually go and pick up. I go to Mamoon's for shawarma.
Okay, sure.
All the time, so.
All right, very well. Thank you for that. Any rebuttals on takeout choices?
Yes, I think you should always go to the Hoboken Hot House. That's all.
Okay. All right, I'm going to hit the button again, and there we go. Ms. Nason will be first on this one.
Oh,
and sometimes we like to ask general questions. Other times we like to get more specific. Just that's the way we do things. A number of questions on both the City Council forums as well as tonight on the Washington Street construction that's going on. What is your plan of action to put Washington Street back together and create a vital town, Hoboken? Will you commit to keep curb bumps out on Washington Street? I'm someone who's concerned about the curb extensions with traffic increases on roads and something else. And what are the estimated cost overruns, it says, if there are some. I don't want to say that there are, but you guys can talk about that on the first phase of Washington Street project. Most of us have seen that construction going on. Ms. Nason.
Are all those questions in one shot? Yes.
Well, you can choose
generally.
whatever aspect you'd like to address.
I would like you all to know that first of all, a year ago I went to City Hall to OPA request the Suez contract. I was told that they don't have it, and you call up Suez, and then I called Suez, and they didn't have it, and then I went to the council members, and they all denied that they didn't have it, and everybody said, I don't know where that $8.2 million went. Well, I did, and they did too, so I don't want them fooling on that. This bump out situation, I am absolutely against it. I think the money could have been spent much better places than what we have done in the debacle on Washington Street. I think what other part of that question? Can you tell me that? Read it again.
Well, there's like 4.
There's so many questions on it.
Yeah, but Washington Street and traffic, a lot.
The Washington Street is crushing businesses and everybody. Listen, Elysian, how are you guys doing, Eugene? How is it going over there with all of this? Thank you. Yeah, that's exactly the answer. Nobody's doing business. No one's finding a parking space. It's a complete mess, and it's all responsible to everyone on this table except for me.
Mr. Bala on Washington Street construction.
Yes. As mayor, I think that the best way to solve this problem is to simply get it done. And as mayor, I will get it done as soon as possible. We will expedite this project if that means extending evening hours, weekend hours, allocation of additional resources to make sure that the construction process runs at a pace that is more efficient. We just need to focus on it and be more disciplined. But I understand the frustration of everyone here. My campaign headquarters is at 4th and Washington, right in the middle of a lot of the construction that's going on. So I live with it now every day, try and find parking or navigate the streets. But as mayor, the best way to solve this problem is to move forward and execute.
Mr. DeFusco on Washington Street.
Thank you, Bob. When I first took my seat on the city council, Washington Street was already a mess. There were potholes, the curbs were crumbling. And so I worked with the administration through differences to get to a plan that was a compromise. The original plan was for protected bike lanes up and down Washington Street. And there was an uproar from the business community. They came and said, how are we going to get our deliveries? How are the seniors going to get dropped off for their doctor's offices? So I listened, and I worked as the chairman of the Transportation Committee to work with the administration, to work with small businesses, to work with my colleagues on the council to get to a place that we're at today. Now, this current state couldn't have been worse. We shouldn't have waited 8 years to repave Washington Street. And now you see what happens when you have a mayor that doesn't have a business background, that doesn't understand budgets, that does not understand project management. You have a plan and a project that is now 7 months behind schedule, $200,000 over budget, and businesses in my own district that are hurting. And these aren't just the businesses. These are young families that work there, and their tips are down. My office as well is on Washington Street, and I see them dig a hole, fill it in, and dig another hole. We need a mayor that's going to roll up his sleeves, get back to business, understand that things need to be done right the first time. And it's not just the infrastructure on Washington Street, it's our dated zoning. Local businesses cannot open on Washington Street because of our dated zoning. You know, if you want to open up a restaurant north of 4th Street on Washington, you can't do it. You have to go in front of the zoning board and sit with Mr. Abel there, the chairman of the zoning board, and he'll tell you no. That's why businesses are hurting, and that's why we need to diversify our tax base.
Ms. Giattino.
At last week's council meeting, I actually had Corporation Council provide us with a resolution that would allow the administration to extend the hours of working on Washington Street, and if that need be, also not just the evenings, but the weekends, as long as they got approval from our police chief. Why hasn't Washington Street been repaved up until now? Because we had a council, we couldn't get 6 votes on the council for the bonding. And the one difference between myself and everyone up here is I get consensus. As council president, over 90% of the votes that took place during my tenure were 9-0 votes. That never happened before. As council president, I made sure our committees had both my allies and my perceived non-allies on every committee. I had Mike, this year, Councilman Russo is chairing Parking and Transportation. No other council president that is an ally of mine or was an ally of mine would have done that. I've made sure that as a whole, we all work together. I work towards consensus. If someone else is elected, we are not going to be able to do these large-scale jobs because we will not be able to bond for them.
Mr. Romano on Washington Street.
Where do we start? Lost spaces. We start with bike racks in the street instead of on the sidewalk, so you can't plow or clean where they are. This whole thing, there's no coordination between Verizon, PSE&G, and Suez, so you got the water, the public service, and there's a gap from when public service worked since 2014. There shouldn't have been a gap for 3 years. The company that's doing the job, are they over their heads with this? They don't have the experience to take on a job of this magnitude. There's been question about the valves that have been placed there. I still didn't get an answer when I asked what the true story is. Are they the permanent valves or they're not? They were working one night right by me till 11 o'clock at night, after 11. They said they couldn't get the water turned off. The pipe blew on them. They couldn't get the insert valve in. And an engineer told me that, from the company, that they're not the right valves. I think you have to evaluate efficiency. I think you need to bring the engineers in. You have to get updates. It's a lack of coordination. You need to work with the police department to do a strategic and organizational plan, which I intend to do with hands-on. If I have to be out there at night looking at what they're doing, you should be going block by block until it's complete, so people know in advance how long that block will be closed, instead of stretching it out 4 blocks where on 3rd and 4th on Washington Street were buried for weeks. A stanchion comes down almost and hit a woman. They dug and they took a tree out. They put a new valve and forgot to fill. These things shouldn't be happening. We need to be strategic and organized, and that's hands-on management.
Mr. Batista.
Yeah, so in 2015, an 89-year-old woman got fatally hit on 5th and Washington. So I take this very seriously. That is actually one of the strongest reasons why I'm running for mayor of Hoboken. I believe that our streets should be so safe that an 80-year-old can bike safely and an 80-year-old woman can walk down the street safely as well. And that should be on every street, not just sometimes and here and there. You know, the truth about the corners is that we have to expand them because that means that the crossings get shorter. And this hasn't been just invented here in Hoboken. It has been proven. There's the National Association of City Planners that they have this as a method as engineers, but also that this prevents sharp turns like the one that happened with this older lady from cars. Also, there's that effect kind of like when you go in to get on the toll and you see that wall that narrows down and then you slow down because that makes you slow down. That is also the reasoning why in the corners, the expansion of the corners makes cars slow down in the intersections. So with all of these points, yes, I believe we have to finish the project as fast as possible so we can fix the roads and we can have a better Washington Street because, yes, right now businesses are hurting. Thanks.
Rebuttals on Washington Street, Ms. Nason.
I just want the public to understand that they all say to you that this is wrong and what's happening, but do you all understand that they're the ones who voted for this Washington Street repavement? Every single one of them. And until Don Zimmer had said, I will not be running, and they all sold her under the bus, it's everybody's fault now. It's her fault. It's everybody's fault. If you even read the paper last week, DeFusco files ethics complaints against Bala. Fisher files complaints against DeFusco. Tiffany Fisher, DeFusco calls Romano. This is a joke. It's just an absolute joke. I just want you to understand that these folks are telling you that everybody's at fault except for taking what the blame is, which is it's their fault.
Mr. Romano next.
Just another point of reference, I don't know, is the fire department ever consulted New Jersey Transit and the PD with regards to these bump outs? And the reason I ask that is now if you're on First Street and somebody's looking to make a left turn, you used to be able to go around and continue. Now the traffic backs up. So I think that coordination, and you know, it's fine when engineers put up red dots. In theory is wonderful, but there's also practical experience when you see it. I think the important thing for pedestrian safety is proper traffic control devices to be installed as soon as possible. And how about the lighting on Washington Street? That also is part of the problem. The lighting is not good on Washington Street. So a consensus needs to be done on the effectiveness and evaluation of those bump outs to make sure that traffic can still flow and not jam up because someone's trying to make a turn. Thank you.
Next rebuttal is Mr. Batista next.
Yeah, so I believe that Hoboken has a lot of amazing engineers that graduated from here. So I stand with engineers. I know the engineers that designed the project on Washington Street. They were Stevens graduates. So when we start thinking about this, we have to start focusing on. You walk down on Washington Street, I've seen buses make the turns, I've seen fire trucks make the turns. There's a video online about a fire truck making the turn. So let's not go on the myths, let's get on the facts, let's talk to the engineers, let's follow what the engineers say. It is a science after all, so let's work towards that. Let's focus on the real goal, which is having a more people-friendly street. Thank you.
Other rebuttals, quiet please. Other rebuttals on Washington Street. Mr. Bala next.
My only rebuttal is to say he's absolutely right.
No applause, please. No applause. Go ahead. Anyone else? Ms. Gittino next.
I did not vote yes for Washington Street. Wait, sorry. The plan, Washington Street was redesigned the day of the council meeting. The council and the administration redesigned Washington Street. You cannot redesign a project like that without having a plan behind it and not expect what to happen to happen.
Mr. DeFusco.
Thank you. Jen's on the record actually not supporting Washington Street because she was in favor of the protected bike lanes that would have snarled traffic, so that's a fact. Further, all of the consensus that we built for a plan that was for a holistic Washington Street was destroyed right before the meeting when the mayor came up and spoke to everybody without consulting with the city council about how she was frustrated and how we should not be voting on this particular plan, how she wanted protected bike lanes. Ideas can't be proprietary in government, Karen. They need to be collaborative, they need to be communicated, and they need to be worked on together. So when a mayor shows up right before a public meeting after months of consensus building and tries to destroy the conversation, that's where politics isn't working. And that's why I am running. Not because I think that Washington Street needed to get done faster or better, but because we could have come together sooner without a mayor that was going to throw us under the bus right before we took the vote. So,
One at a time, please. One at a time.
I'm finished. Karen, please stop interrupting me, though.
All right, next question. I will hit the button here. We'll see the new order, which Mr. DeFusco will be first. Another infrastructure, a bunch of infrastructure questions. This set is, well, one reads, water, water everywhere. How will you deal with Suez and water infrastructure? How do you plan to manage development that was approved prior to Hurricane Sandy if it's no longer in Hoboken's best interest due to flooding and overdevelopment? What will you do in the immediate future about flooding in the pop-up park? And et cetera. So Suez, flooding issues, Mr. DeFusco.
I sit next to a councilman that works for one of the most politically connected law firms in this state. No, not oh gosh, guys.
Quiet please, from the audience.
This is important information. During the 2 years that the city was in negotiation with Suez, Mr. Bala's firm accepted $8.5 million in lobbying fees from Suez. I know that sounds tough, but that's the fact of the matter. And during those same 2 years, we accrued $8.5 million of debt to Suez. I'm not making any accusations. I'm just saying the facts are there. Now, what have we seen over the Bala-Zimmer administration? We've seen flooding persist in the west side of town. We've seen the construction of only one, not two flood pumps. The first flood pump came under the previous administration. We've seen a park that's been delayed for 10 years in the southwest and over budget. And we've seen a conversation about rebuild by design happen, and I'm very glad we have the $230 million from the federal government. But what you're not hearing is that there is another $770 million left to fully fund the three-stage plan. So we need an honest conversation in terms of how we're going to fix flooding, how we're going to pay for these things. And during the Cinco de Mayo rainstorm, we found one thing from North Hudson Sewage Authority. It wasn't the pumps. The pumps were working under capacity. It was actually our sewer lines. So we need to get back to basics, have public-private partnerships that work productively, and hold developers accountable for repairing our sewer systems. Thank you, Bob.
Mr. Bautista on water.
Yeah, so I've been living on the west side of Hoboken for the whole time that I've been in Hoboken. I just moved to 4th and Grand, so I think this qualifies. So basically, yeah, I understand the frustration when it comes to flooding. I've experienced it. I've had to climb walls, and it's not even sandy. It's like rain. It has gotten a little better on our side. It's nowhere near what it should be. The pumps are not the solution because that's only one piece of everything that we have to do. The pipes have to be bigger. We have to invest in that. I think the big issue with Suez was transparency. There was many activists that were calling it out on social media, asking the city to, telling them, hey, there's another pipe burst, and it has been 0 days without, bursting of the pipes. What are we renegotiating the contract with Suez? And there was no answer. And then we find out that they've been having negotiations for so long without really having the public being involved in these deals, in these conversations, keeping us up to date on what's going on with this. Are we progressing or not? Then, coming over to, the Rebuild by Design project is something that we have to follow through. It's great that we got the beginning of the funding. We have to work more towards getting the funding for the rest. I hope that we all can work together after the election also on getting these things done, on collaborating. I think that's the main focus when it comes to the city and our infrastructure.
Ms. Giattino.
We need a programmatic approach to upgrading our water systems. I pushed the administration to work with Suez to create a 10-year upgrade plan. Based on this plan, I also advocated for 10 million earmarked to be spent on the highest priority upgrades in 2017 and 2018. I pledged to complete an assessment and implement a plan that addresses all the high-risk areas and to identify other sources of funding like developer contributions for the repairs that currently the taxpayers are footing the entire bill for. We need a city engineer to oversee all of these large projects. Washington Street, which we just talked about, and many other infrastructure upgrades we face and look to minimize disruptions to the residents. In terms of flooding and CSOs, I will continue to support Mayor Zimmer's Rebuild by Design project, including the resiliency structures in our parks. I will work with the North Hudson Sewage Authority to provide a third pump that they will pay for. Suez, I want the best deal for Hoboken. I believe that's what we all want. We need to better understand what options are available to us. At this time, we don't know all the options, we don't understand the details, and until then, which will be when I'm mayor, then we can begin the negotiations. Thank you.
Mr. Bala.
Yes, I want to be Hoboken's infrastructure mayor. I think there's nothing more important right now in this city than upgrading our aging infrastructure. You can't have further growth if you don't have the infrastructure to accommodate it. And that's the real challenge in the next 4 years. We have made incredible strides with respect to reducing the flooding through, during this administration, because I was at the groundbreaking of the downtown wet weather pump, as well as the 11th Street pump. The downtown wet weather pump has reduced, almost eliminated flooding in southwest Hoboken, had an incredible impact. And now in the Midwest area of Hoboken, near the ShopRite and Madison, we've had tremendous success in reducing the flooding through those infrastructure projects. We're going to go even further through these resiliency parks. These resiliency parks, the first one in the southwest, the next one at the 7th and Jackson Street area, and the third one at the Northwest Resiliency Park, is going to be able to, it's part of the Rebuild by Design component of storing water rather than having it come to the street. It's been recognized as a nationally innovative solution to flooding, and I'm very proud to be a part of Rebuild by Design as chairman of, co-chair of the Community Advisory Group. It's something that is going to protect us from coastal flooding for the years to come. Thank you.
Mr. Romano on water.
Having lived here all my life, I've seen the flooding constantly, not at its worst with Sandy. I think the key is to get those other pumps completed. We need to get pumps 3 and 4 completed. We have to find a way either with funding and grants, and we have to bring the North Hudson Sewage Authority to the table. We need to have them involved because their antiquated sewer system needs to be upgraded as soon as possible, and we have to work with them to get it done. Any development that's done should include the installation of new sewer lines. You have to have options, and talking with Suez, you have to find out if there's other options available, if there's other companies that can do this better. Water retention we discussed, which is important. The Rebuild by Design was just awarded with regards to the southern end of town, and we're not going to have it where transit wanted it. We're going to have it in front of where transit wanted it. And this is another issue that we're going to have to discuss because there's no funding to put it where transit wants. ELCOR does not want to pay for that. We have to look, we have the resiliency parks that was stated. We have the telling everyone in the new development how water retention is important, but it's going to take such a massive effort to get this done. We have to roll up our sleeves, and we can't dilly-dally or delay that's been going on. North Hudson Sewage is a key with the water company. Thank you.
Ms. Nason.
Thank you, Bob. I just, if we weren't doing a good job, if you're not doing a good job on your job, what happens to you? You get fired. If this Suez is not doing the job that should be done properly, shop the deal. Everyone here at this table, again I say to you, I asked for that Suez contract 1 year ago, and I especially asked Jen Giattino, the president, because that's who they all told me to refer to. if this deal could be shopped, and I was told no. So I'm just saying, if we don't do a good job in our jobs, we are either searched out, shopped for, or replaced. I'm just saying. The other thing I would like to say to you is that we're sitting at Stevens College. I just want to point out Dr. Alan Bloomberg. You did an amazing thing with a buoy that's sitting out in the water that he won awards for and should be applauded for, because he can tell within 3 days if the tide is rising. If we have an early warning system, work with Stevens College. If it was up to me and if I was mayor, from the beginning, from when the bridge, which they asked for, from anything, I would work immensely with Stevens College, who are all engineers. I watched the zoning officers sitting here at the table throw off my husband on zoning, who is a civil engineer from Lehigh, an oceanographer, and a lawyer. Are you kidding? That wasn't diverse enough? We need experts to pay attention to what's happening here in this city. Thank you.
Are there now beginning rebuttals on water policy? Anyone? Ms. Giattino.
Just one other point about Suez. We need to make sure, and I will make sure, that we have more discipline around our material contracts and respond in a more timely manner to any obligations related to those contracts.
Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Romano.
I just find it very concerning that a citizen asks for a copy of a contract and no one seems to know where it is. That doesn't bode well for anyone here. And I think that as soon as possible, that contract should be found and copies provided to those that requested it. And also the emphasis, again, working with Stevens, I think is very important because of their vast experience with this situation. But it's going to take a collaborative effort. We have to be aware and get on top of this as soon as possible within reason.
Next, Mr. DeFusco.
Thank you, Bob. You know, we did ask on the council for where we stood with the negotiations, but what certain people up here fail to realize is that the mayor negotiates and the council approves. So we were not kept privy, at least I was not. But to my left and my right, we have Council President Giattino, who sat for 2 years appointing the infrastructure and finance committees. We have Ravi to my right, somebody that clearly worked for a law firm that had business relationships with Suez. What do we know and when did we know it? I can't tell you, because as an outsider, as an independent on the city council, I too, like Karen, asked for the status of negotiations. And to Jen's point, we've already identified where the primary water mains that we want to, where we want to repair are. It's just, how are we going to pay for them? This current administration is proposing bonding $5 million for the next 5 years to pay for it. We need to stop borrowing on the backs of taxpayers. Smart, holistic land use that holds developers accountable. What are we doing here? Let's get back to basics and fund these things the right way the first time. Thank you.
Mr. Batista.
Yes, so something that we're forgetting about the topic of water is also climate change, right? When we're talking about the flooding. And something that we have to think about is giving people more options so that they can become more independent of the car. Because we have to be realistic. If just 1% of the people, 1% more of people use a car in Hoboken, we are in trouble, right? So, for example, the Hudson Bike Share program that we have in Hoboken has done 300,000 trips in the past 2 years. Those are trips that could have been done, if they don't have a car, they could have been done by Uber, by Lyft, by cab, in any other way. So that's something that really saves on that end. And also, you know, thinking more about mass transit options like the bus rapid transit system that I mentioned earlier. Rain gardens, we have to have more of those. And we have to focus on those alternatives, not just think about the pipes, but think about the long term as well. Not even long term anymore.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we're moving on here, hitting the button. And there we go, Mr. Bala will be first on this. This is a little bit of a change of pace, folks. This is about you as people, several cards like this. What relevant of experience and expertise will you bring to the office of Mayor of Hoboken? What are your qualifications to serve as Hoboken's mayor? What experiences outside of politics would you draw from the most as mayor? Mr. Bala.
Thank you. The experience I bring that would make me most qualified to be mayor, I would say, is threefold. First, I am, in my professional life, a trial attorney, a litigator. I try cases in the areas of civil rights, commercial litigation, and I do some land use and redevelopment work. So when we talk about things like eminent domain, I have private clients who see the impact it can have in bringing the government to the negotiating table. I've been on both sides of the aisle as a municipal lawyer and a trial attorney, and that will serve me well as mayor, navigating the complexities of whether it's redevelopment agreements or any sort of legal matters in litigation. Number two, I have the most experience on this table serving as a city council member. Again, 8 years of experience, 2 of them as council president, and have been through those hard times to make hard decisions. And number 3, I'm proud to say that I'm a father of 2 young children who go to the schools here in Hoboken, and I think that brings life experience to really understand the needs of the community, whether they be education, recreation, or what have you. But I think having that life experience with a wife and 2 kids is important as well.
Ms. Giutina.
Keep surprising me. My experience, well, some of you may know this, many of you may not, but I was a professional ballet dancer, so the discipline that I received from that over years and years greatly benefits me. I also did work at the New York Stock Exchange for over a decade as both a broker and a specialist. I was the first female that Goldman Sachs ever brought out as a broker at the New York Stock Exchange. It was an extremely high-pressure job, which actually served me very well. So I think there's a lot in common with that and the job of the mayor. I have been city council president 3 times, so I've worked very closely with the administration and with the directors in the city, as well as with all my fellow council members. I understand the ins and outs of municipal budgeting, being that I did serve on the Revenue and Finance Committee for 6 years. And I also have children, 3 of them, who attend the same school as Ravi, so his skills there, I suppose mine are the same, or maybe 1 child better.
Mr. Romano.
I think a few different things. My experience as a police commander with regard to both budgets and planning schedules, deployment of manpower, discipline, and to see that a task is done with benchmarks that are given. As a freeholder, I was chair of the board. I've developed relationships with different leaders of different levels of government, from federal down to municipal and other areas. My experience also with regard to how we get grants. I also a father who raised his son in the Hoboken and school system for Wallace. I think that my background in this area provides me with the experience and management skills to lead this city in a positive direction. I feel that I'm ability to work with people. If you don't vote for me, that doesn't matter. I intend to reach out for each and every one of you. Not everyone is going to want to work with me, but I intend to make that attempt because everyone is important, and I think that's part of the answer. I'm also bilingual. I think we need to reach out for those that cannot speak English. I'm the grandson of immigrants, 3 out of 4 that couldn't speak English. The housing authority is very important to me. I just don't go down there for public relations. Both my grandmothers live down there and my aunt, and I still continue to play sports. So I have a connection to all different segments, whether it be those that, the kayak group. So.
Mr. DeFusco.
Thank you, Bob. With the exception of Ron, I'm the only private sector executive that actually works in Manhattan here, in an industry unrelated to the city of Hoboken, the county of Hudson, or the state of New Jersey. And I think that's important. We need somebody that has a separation between business and municipal politics. I've been here for 14 years. I got here the day after college. I've spent 7 of those 14 years serving the city as both the zoning board commissioner, and then 2 years back, I defeated a 21-year incumbent, somebody that everybody said was unbeatable, and they said not to run. And I ran based on ideas and a vision, a belief that this community could come together old and new, black and white, Hispanic and Italian, and I showed them in this election that an outsider and an independent could win. And that conversation has continued to this day. Nobody expected to see me on the city council, and I've always worked through the political divide in the best interest of my neighborhood. I know that my private sector background, handling tens of million dollars worth of budgets, partnerships, management, projects of all shapes and sizes will benefit this city. So it's the combination between my public experience as well as my private experience. And quite frankly, I'm very proud to say that I'm the first gay elected official in the city of Hoboken. My partner is somebody that helps underserved.
Quiet, please.
No applause necessary for being true to who you are, so I appreciate it though. And my partner has served this community and underserved communities as a physician, as a Guatemalan immigrant. So together, I believe we can have a progressive city hall that is open to everyone. Thank you very much, Bob.
Ms. Nason.
Thank you. I believe you say that you're New York City. I spent 28 years in New York City, and I had a very successful jazz bar and 3 other very successful businesses before I came here. My relationships in New York City are such. I've worked with real estate developers that were I.M. Pei, Sandy Pei, Michael Graves. My husband's, again, an attorney, a civil engineer, an oceanographer. I think in my theater world, I know I've said to you, I own the rights to the movie The Rose to put on Broadway. I'm negotiating that now for the last 10 years, and now negotiating and finishing with Fox. I mean, I don't think you have to be in the council and do a lousy job, as this council has done, to be able to work with a new council, a new administration, and be able to run this city like I've done many times as a business. Thank you.
Mr. Batista.
Yeah, so common denominator when it comes to the conversation today has been really resources, the lack of them. And we need to really be creative when we come to that. I have experience in bootstrapping initiatives for a decade. I started, just last year I was an advisor for Transit Solutions. When they came out with to me, they said, we want a light rail, and I said, do you have the money to build it? Do you have the money to operate it? And then the money to expand it. So that's why I brought to the table a better alternative, which is the bus rapid transit system. I was an advisor for New York State Department of State on how to better reach and connect with people in a more efficient way, because budgets are always limited when it comes to state. And I also collaborated with the Small Business Administration as well in how to better have a connection and really help businesses, small businesses in New York City. Besides that, I was, the first 11 years that I lived here in Hoboken, I was an undocumented immigrant, and I feel that that's a proof of resiliency, and that's also proof of being resourceful, because and in order for me to have been able to go to college, graduate, I had to and when my dad had ALS, I had to step in and work and grow the business on my mom, the cleaning business here in Hoboken, and which we clean homes for 30 people, and that's the way I paid my college tuition. I went to school at nighttime, and meanwhile, I was also an executive director for an education nonprofit. So that's what I bring to the table.
Okay, I'm going to skip rebuttals on personal qualifications. I don't think that's a good use of our time. So I'm going to hit the button again, and there we go. Mr. DeFusco will be first on this. And this is going to be just a question for me, for all of you, public policy question. What is the single worst idea you've heard one of your opponents propose in this campaign? I mean, and what would make that idea so profoundly bad? The one worst idea. It doesn't have to be personal. It can be just a public policy question, really. And so, quiet, please. So, Mr. DeFusco, what's the worst public policy idea you've heard a competitor, opponent make here?
This is a tough question, but Bob, the belief that an outsider with no experience in city government can completely break a system and reassemble it productively is the most absurd thing I've ever had. And we have somebody up here tonight that is just throwing arrows and darts, hoping to break a political system, when in reality, to build a consensus and to build a council and to build an administration, you need somebody that's a collaborator, somebody that understands that business is about bringing people together and having big ideas, but also rolling up their sleeves and getting down to work. That we have career politicians here that believe that the work that they've done is good, And it has been fine. So from a policy perspective, it's been fine. But I think Hoboken deserves better than fine. We deserve somebody that's going to fight for the future of this city without bonding, without borrowing, without putting our residential tax base to debt. And I believe that the third most absurd thing I've heard is that a sitting city council president for the last 2 years is now thinking that she can do something that she hasn't done in the last 2 years or the last 6 years on the council. So it's easy to throw arrows. It's a lot harder to collaborate and work together as an elected body. But during political campaign season, it's funny time. You'll hear a lot of things tonight that, quite frankly, won't happen. I think it's time for a change, somebody that knows how to get these things done politically, policy-wise, as well as from a business perspective.
Mr. Batista on bad ideas.
Yeah, so I would say when a person advocates for streets to be wider, now that might sound really cool and really good for everyone. However, we have to think of the fact that not everybody's young, not everybody's, there's people with special needs, there's people that are younger, and when you make a street wider, the cars go faster. And I don't think anybody's gonna, disagree with me on that end. And when we think about Hoboken, it's a walkable city. That's part of the essence of Hoboken. So we have to think about those things before we start pushing for this type of policies. Although it might sound politically, good and score some points, we have to think that lives are more important than that, and that's why that's my litmus test. Pedestrian safety and really what. I believe in the engineers, and maybe I think that we have to focus a bit more about that, about listening, and not so much about speaking what we believe might be common sense when there's science to prove it otherwise.
Mr. Romano.
This pie in the sky idea that somehow comes along that vehicles are going to just go poof and disappear in Hoboken, it's just not going to happen. This is a city. It's a city. It's a municipality. It's not a village that has urban issues. Pedestrian safety is paramount. Bicycles are important. But vehicles exist. And I think when you get the proper improvements on Washington Street, that ensures the pedestrian safety, the proper traffic control devices. Yes, I watched a woman fall on Fifth and Wash. Not because of vehicles, because the hole that was in that she couldn't see in the street. So vehicles are here to stay. I have a bicycle. I also have a car. And I think most people do have a car. We have to find a way to provide better parking for the people who do own vehicles. The parking garages, they need to somehow work the price down so people can afford it. A lot of the uptown developments, people park on the street because the garages are too expensive. But this idea that let's get rid of the vehicles, it's not going to happen. And I think that we have to realize, again, pedestrian safety is paramount. Bicycle safety is important. But vehicles have a right to exist. People shouldn't be crossing on green lights. Okay? I watch it constantly lately because the attitude seems to be, well, vehicles have to drive slow. We all know that. It's important to follow the rules of the road. But at the same time that we keep talking about everything.
Mr. Bala on bad ideas.
Well, I'll get to that. I just want to say that I drive to work every day and understand what Freeholder Romano is saying. The cars are not going to go poof. We've got to find a way to coexist, cars, pedestrians, and bicyclists. I feel bad that you're asking this question because you're almost compelling me to be negative, and I don't want to do so. I think this should be about civility, but I think one of the more pie in the sky ideas is the one that we're going to have a floating pool and an urban beach in polluted water on property Hoboken doesn't even own. You can make a rendering of anything and make it look great. I mean, come on. That's just an attempt, I think, to fool the public, and I think that's not a good idea.
Ms. Giuttino.
I'm prepared this time. I'm not going to do worst, but what I'm most disappointed in, and Councilman Bala just spoke about not going negative, and I have the flyer here with me, but I'm not going to hold it up. I'm sure you all got it in the mail today. I expected and received negative and hateful mailers from Carmelo Garcia. I did not expect them from Ravi Bala. I guess this is what blind ambition does. If you want to run for Congress or Senate, do. Just not on the cost of Hoboken. I will be a mayor for everyone, and yes, my focus is Hoboken. And by the way, for the last 6 years, I have stood up for everyone, including Ravi Bala.
Ms. Nason.
I completely understood your question as a very simple one. What was a bad idea? So I'm going to say a floating pool over the Hudson River was a absolutely silly, super silliest idea. And then there was, from the same person, I think you had said trolleys, a trolley car. I think that would probably not work in this city.
Okay, any rebuttals? Mr. DeFusco first.
You know, it's surprising coming from a visionary, self-proclaimed visionary infrastructure mayor that Ravi Bala thinks a floating pool isn't possible. 10 years ago when Don Zimmer was talking about parks, they all said it wasn't possible at the time. And that's why politics has leveled off in this city, where we have lost our ground to Jersey City and to Brooklyn. A floating pool is very possible. Brooklyn's doing it, and doing it well. Amsterdam has done it and is doing it well. We need a mayor that's unabashed in saying that change could be good, that change can be visionary, that change can come to Hoboken. We need to stop thinking that just because we're fine as a city that we cannot be great, and that's why I'm running. If you don't have a mayor that's going to push big ideas, you're going to get more of the same. And you have a lot of great candidates here tonight that are going to tighten up a couple bolts. But if you want somebody that's going to be unabashed and having big ideas, working hard, having the energy to get the small things done, I think there's only one choice here tonight. Thank you very much.
Rebuttals, Mr. Batista next.
Yeah, so I completely agree. Vehicles are not going anywhere. That's why there's still streets for cars. I mean, I'm not saying make Hoboken car free. You know, I'm saying let's have more traffic-free options, which is a little different. And also, it's the fact that bicyclists are not going anywhere. There's 20,000 members of the Hudson Bike Share program here in Hoboken. There's a lot of people that, if you have seen the terminal in Hoboken, it's packed with parked bikes that do move. And also pedestrians are here. And everybody is a pedestrian at some point. If you're going to go get your car, you're going to go walking, right? And sometimes your car might not be right outside your home. Sometimes you have to walk to where the parking space was at the night before. So we have to start thinking with that mindset, that it's not a fight amongst each other. We have to think that we are in this together. We're in the same boat. We all live in Hoboken, and we're all neighbors at the end of the day.
Okay, anyone else? Mr. Bala.
Yeah, briefly, we talked about hateful mailers. That's a bit confusing because my mailers are about standing up against hate. And that's what matters. That's what we're talking about. Are we going to stand up against hate that's coming from the White House and this president, or are we going to remain silent and say nothing? And that's a legitimate contrast between two candidates in this race. I'm not afraid to stand up against injustice and protect Hoboken's residents, and I have a track record of doing so. Thank you.
Ms. Nason next.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, as a visionary, Michael, when you talk about being a visionary, in 2011, I sent Mayor Don Zimmer a letter, and I've had many meetings with Don in the beginning. The letter I sent to her was, I owned a building on 17th and 10th. I bought in Chelsea when Chelsea was nothing. And I watched Amy's Bread become the first vendor, and that's why I serve her in my cafe, the first vendor in Chelsea Pier. In 2011, I brought a letter to Don's office to have a meeting with Danny Meyer, who's a friend of mine, and his wife Audrey. I proposed doing a Chelsea market before all of this nonsense of Danny Meyer ever came out. That is the truth. As a visionary, I have gone and been on the front page of the New York Times and the Washington Post for being the first business in New York City to combine two businesses within one. Because rents are so high, it can be done, and I did do it. I created a jazz bar within a plant store so that you could shop, have a flower wrapped up, and enjoy jazz.
Mr. Romano next.
Yes, I'd also like to see the option of City Bike having a chance to come to Hoboken to help with the connection to New York and to Jersey City, to see that, and you know, hopefully it's not exclusive agreement that the other bike has. Also, with regards to the pool, everybody's talking about a pool. If it's possible, on that $30 million contaminated piece of property, hopefully if we can completely get it remediated somehow, to have a combination of a pool complex as Union City, as North Bergen or Secaucus does, with that wonderful, beautiful, active park with some nice trees planted around it so everyone can come and enjoy in both the field and a pool complex. Thank you.
Ms. Giattino.
I was council president when someone made derogatory gestures at Councilman Bala at a council meeting, and I had him removed. Councilman Bala has not stood up to Chris Christie, and as a matter of fact, the last time Chris Christie ran, Councilman Bala contemplated publicly supporting him.
All right, so that would be, let me move on. I'll hit the button here. And there we have Mr. Romano will be first on this. And so from general, we'll do another specific question. This will be the last question before closing statements. And this is a little more specific. Do you feel Hoboken needs more or less police and firemen? Do we spend the right amount? Do we spend too much? Do we spend too little? For both police and firemen. Also, Uptown Hoboken, someone says, is experiencing a rash of burglaries. What will you do to enhance our safety? Someone else asked, should Hoboken police wear body cameras? So questions about police and fire. Former policeman, Mr. Romano.
You couldn't have an issue more dear or closer to my heart. First, we have one of the most foremost in this county chief executives running our police department, and therefore he needs to have the resources. I know the chief has many good ideas, and we have to have a way to fund it. We have a lot of growth up in the north area, and I'm sure that the chief would appreciate to have the resources to have, I've heard as I've campaigned, walking police officers, as the old community policing program, which the current chief and I helped establish. And I think to give them those resources and an opportunity to have some kind of mini precinct in that area, as well as opening up the mini precinct that, in the federal housing area. But the chief needs the resources, and we have to work with him to get those resources, which is manpower. The police department is outdated and antiquated. The rehabilitation that was done is not working. So the police department needs a new structure. So let's work with developers to somehow give them a new structure. The firehouses. The last firehouse built here was 1920-something. That's ridiculous. Let's work with developers again or grants to get the fire department what they need to reopen the rescue company, to keep the 4 engines active, to make the fire department also have their proper equipment. With regard to, you said, body cameras, I think that's a discussion that has to be had with the chief of police to find out where the budget would be to afford such. And with regard to burglaries, well, I'll do that in rebuttal.
Ms. Nason.
Thank you. I have asked the council members before, maybe 6 months ago, and I hope they consider it, is that we should have every building that's being built now, and probably pre-existing, they should be pre-wired for cameras. Every single corner in this city should have cameras feeding to the police department to help them so that when we have north, south, east, west, we should be able to be like London. There should be cameras on every corner. That has to happen, and it really needs to happen. The fire department as well. I don't think we're funding the police department and the fire department as much as we should. I'd love to work with Ken Ferrante and see how I can help the situation further. I just can't stress enough that security cameras are just so needed. Thank you.
Mr. Bala.
Yes, I think one of the most important qualities of leadership, of being a good leader, is having the ability to listen. And the first thing I would do is seek input from our law enforcement top officials, from Chief Ferrante, from our fire chief, from any other stakeholders to assess what the needs are, and also listen from outside sources to assess what the needs are. We currently have a Chief Ferrante, who has done a remarkable job in reducing crime in this city, and that's not an opinion, it's a fact. That said, we have also what's called a table of organization. That's a policy that the City Council sets as to how many officers, superior officers, as well as rank and file at each level. If the TO, the table of organization, is not complete, then I am open to hiring additional police officers, for example, to complete that TO. But it's a very careful balance, and yet you need to be careful because what we're doing is we're balancing public safety with our tax dollars as citizens. So any expansion that is not necessary, for example, has an adverse impact on your property taxes. So it's a very good question. It's a matter of balancing public safety needs and protecting our tax dollars as well. Thank you.
Mr. Batista.
Yeah, so Chief, what do you think? So yeah, I mean, I collaborated with the Chief of Police previously in pedestrian safety. I've also heard his concerns in terms of, you know, basically the fact that you have limited amount of resources in order, for example, to enforce pedestrian safety. And I believe that through better street design, you can have the police be more occupied in dealing with other priorities, and that way you really you know, improve the resources that you're using as a city. So the collaboration is that it's listening to the different chiefs. You know, there was a, you know, if we're coordinating for a grant for the fire department to hire new people, then also collaborating with them so that we know that that position is going to be filled up, you know, and that we're able to have the specific amount of people that we need in order to keep our streets safe and our citizens really active. And also, I believe that emergency management, that the team has to, you know, be listened to also in how we can improve things, bring more resources in. Thank you very much.
Ms. Giattino.
I do really love the police on bicycles. I think it changes the connection between the community and the police officers to the better. But what I'd like to speak about more is the facilities. We have 4 firehouses that the city has spent over $1 million on repairs in the last 3 years, and this is because they're all historic buildings. Is this really the best use of our money? And potentially, what could that money be freed up for? We have a police station that's sitting on the most valuable land in Hoboken. We should be looking at all the city's assets and figuring out what their best and highest use is. We also have 2 surface parking lots in town. I'm sorry to anyone who parks on those parking lots. It's great for about 25 people, but they're surface parking lots. They could be used in a much better way. We have 3 municipal garages on Hudson Street. The tops of those garages should be utilized. We have the community center. Yes, the community center is falling apart, and we spend tons of money there. We should be focusing on building a community center elsewhere with funding from outside of the city, and then go back and repair that one because we deserve to. Thank you.
Mr. DeFusco.
I'll have to say, I agree with Jen. I wish she said that 6 years ago. We sit on some of the most valuable property for our police force, and yet we're not able to use that to develop the multi-service center, to build new police space uptown and downtown. There's a rising string of car thieves uptown because we don't have an uptown police station as our uptown community is growing. And I think the police do a tremendous job. But what we need to do is get them out of their cars and walk in the streets. I'm the downtown councilman. I walk down First Street every night, Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. I work hand in hand with Chief Ferranti and the entire team over there. I know how difficult it is. We need to stop the reliance on Class 2 officers and hire more full-time police personnel. Doing so not only creates a career in law enforcement and investment in this community, but creates a knowledge of the community that is unparalleled. We need to make sure that we do install waterfront cameras, and I had pushed the administration very early on to install waterfront cameras as well as cameras in and out of town. So if there is a hit and run, we can track these cars and know exactly who's coming into our city. And the one thing I'll mention is that the fire department is understaffed, in my opinion. I don't care what anybody says. We don't have enough fire personnel, and I'll tell you, it'll never come from the chief. I'll be talking to the guys at the Elks Club, and they'll say it over a beer. We're understaffed in the fire department. It's time for a change.
All right, rebuttals on police and fire. Anyone? You're suggesting she goes, or are you ready?
Oh, no, go ahead.
Okay. I guess I have to speak from the heart with this. It's a no-brainer to me when it comes to public safety. For those you don't know, the Hoboken Police Department, part of their fleet is from 2005, unacceptable. With regards to burglaries, Their strategies, obviously, they're not discussed publicly, but burglary captures is important, and they're doing a phenomenal job of closing out burglaries. Again, it goes to resources, different vehicles, the ability to move personnel, the ability to have such surveillance equipment, the ability to have these cameras. So it's strategies that the chief executive knows, but he needs the tools to give it to him. So that's beholding on us as elected officials to ensure the safety of our citizens, both through the police and fire departments. We're fixing firehouses that are antiquated, that can't fit modern apparatus. We have a lot in police headquarters where the rodents go into the trailers and eat our property. If you look down at the poles, they're collapsing.
Other rebuttals on police and fire? All right, so, Mr. DeFusco.
Yeah, you know, I'd like to use this opportunity to talk about how we're going to pay for it. Councilman Bala talks about rising taxes, and I don't think we need to raise our residential tax base to do so. The theme of this conversation is about productive, holistic land use. If we delay productive land use in this city and only incentivize residential development, what we're doing is we're saying no to millions of dollars that could be coming in through tech co-working spaces, through urban wineries, through the European market at the train terminal. So we need to find tax bases that are productive so we can take those earnings and hire more cops, hire more fire. That's how we pay for it, not by artificially limiting our public safety enforcement. That's exactly why we have noise issues on First Street. We don't have enough folks, you know, walking the streets, and that's why we need a change. Everything is holistic and interconnected in city government. If we don't do one thing, you're not going to get another thing. And we've seen where this administration has taken us. Everything is on the backs of the residents and our tax base.
Other rebuttals on Ms. Nason.
Just briefly, I had done a video that maybe some of you had seen where I proposed to do free Wi-Fi for the entire city. Now, the council members all knew, and I proposed it, and I would have done it with somebody who would have spent his time for nothing, not $1. So I know now we have kiosks at place, and we're going to now have Wi-Fi, but from my understanding, that Wi-Fi comes along with commercials and advertising and whatever. I would have done this for nothing, for safety reasons. I just want you to know that, and I still will. This gentleman that I proposed would have done this. He will still do it for nothing. We can have free Wi-Fi everywhere in this city.
Anyone else on this issue? Police and fire? Okay, seeing none. We will now have closing statements where applause is welcome. And we will begin with Mr. Batista.
Yes, thank you. So, Hoboken is a unique place. It's not New York City, it's not Jersey City. We have very high density, and that means that we have a more urgent need to really address our issues of traffic, congestion, our issues of parking, our issues of mobility. And so that's why it is more urgent for us to really bring those solutions a lot faster. We cannot afford to take baby steps on really having better mass transit and better infrastructure for traffic-free options. Because that, at the end of the day, also brings economic development. And now, we need to work fast so that we can have a more people-friendly Hoboken. Hoboken that has more traffic-free options, that promotes entrepreneurship, that promotes active life, and that really have our streets be so safe that an 80-year-old can bike or an 80-year-old woman can walk down the street safely. So thank you very much for your attention. Please look for Ron Bautista 9H on November 7th and vote for a more people-friendly Hoboken. Thank you.
Next, Ms. Nason.
Thank you all very much for coming out tonight. And I just want to say I am a proud Republican, and I'm not ashamed to say it. So if it's okay with you, there are great Republicans out there in this, and we don't all wear scarlet letters. As a Republican mayor, I am very proud to say I would not ever lie to you as this administration has done. I want to spend my time creating new things, new wonderful arts and culture. I will devote my time to making sure that this city works with Stevens College and never works against it. I will spend my time, devoted time, to make sure that the police department, the fire department, the education, the schools, the systems that are crumbling. And not only that, the historical society is here. I know that there are people here for the historical museums that are lacking in funds. Am I done? I am, really? Wow. Okay. One more thing. When you go behind that curtain, press that button, don't let them tell you what you're going to do. You do what you feel is right for this city. People, you have the power. People have the power.
Ms. Giattino.
So, my campaign has been a happy journey of knocking on your doors, meeting you in your neighborhoods, and listening to you. I will be a mayor that listens to you. I pledge my unswerving devotion to the task before me, should the people of Hoboken honor me with their confidence and trust as their mayor. I'm the kind of person who likes to get things done, working with people and sharing in the credit. I have found this approach both fulfilling and effective. I will bring that spirit to the mayor's office. Please vote for me, Jen Giattino, and my team on November 7th. I will be a mayor for everyone. Thank you.
Mr. Romano.
My life has been Hoboken. I want the challenge to lead this city, to attempt to solve the problems that have been spoken about tonight. I can't solve them all. I will make mistakes. But one thing for sure, I will always try to do the right thing. Transparency, ethics. One Hoboken for all. Everyone's important. West Side, North Side, any ethnic group. I'm a business owner, an elected official, and a proud former police captain and high school teacher. I will be hands-on out there in that street at night on Washington Street to make sure that things get done. I will be answerable to you all. And I think that it's important that we all work together and be one, not divisive. Please consider, vote for me and Team Romano because we care about each and every one of you and intend to serve you. Thank you.
Mr. Bala.
I am concerned about the lack of civility in this mayoral forum, the sniping back and forth that's gone on with several candidates. And what I think is that, and the reason it concerns me is that this is a debate to see who is best positioned to be the next mayor to lead our city. I strongly believe we need an adult in the room. We need an adult in the mayor's office, and we need an adult to lead the city of Hoboken to confront the challenges ahead. You know, Joe Biden had once said that real leadership requires both gut, heart, and head. And that means having the fortitude to make tough decisions, the compassion to speak up, and the smarts to get things done. I would submit that those are the leadership qualities that well position me to lead our city. With that steady leadership, I think Hoboken's best days are well ahead, and I hope that you consider voting for me on November 7th. Thank you.
Mr. DeFusco.
This city was long divided before I even got here. You see people on the stage that have been politicians in, dividing our population, not coming up with ideas, not creating a belief in our future. And you even saw it tonight, that a big idea wasn't possible. So that's why we need a change. And I believe the changes can be productive, they can be collaborative, they can be innovative. I believe that a change can unite Hoboken, whether you're born here like Anthony or whether you got here a few years ago. I believe that we can come together, and we need a mayor that has that shared value. I believe that we need a mayor that has business experience that is not related to politics of New Jersey. I believe we need a leader that has the experience municipally, but also has an understanding of what's happening across the river, what's happening across this world. And I believe we need a leader that's unabashed in saying that change can be positive, and change can be unique, and change can be transformative. We need new direction for the city and to unite together once and for all. Thank you so much to the QLC.
Okay, so we ask, before you guys go, we ask your indulgence for just a couple more minutes. And on a personal note, I wanted to say that my question about bad ideas was intended to be a public policy. I thought I tried to clarify that at the beginning of it, not necessarily a personal question, but a public policy contest of ideas. Is Mary Kelly in the room here? And look, she's over there. And so please welcome Mary Kelly, everybody, back again.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you once again for your support of these forums, for giving of your time, and for keeping them moving, which is quite a challenge, and keeping it pretty civil. Very good job on that part. To Stevens, thank you for welcoming us into your community and into your home, and to the Student Government Association for your support of our endeavors this evening. As always, to the citizens who care enough to come out or to take the time to listen to
you guys could please stay in your seats just for a few more minutes. I'm sorry, Mary, go ahead.
That's okay. To our candidates for sharing your vision with us tonight. I know that there are plenty of people who have not yet made a decision as to who they're going to support. And I think that it goes uncontested that you've given people an awful lot to think about. On a plea note, if you appreciate these forums, there are costs associated with them. We are a tax-deductible 501c3 organization. We'd be happy if you would visit our website and consider making a tax-deductible donation so that we can continue to offer these services to the public. So thank you all so very much for coming out this evening.